Sobin, thank you so much. Welcome to this Journey Dialogues, and I'm extremely thankful for you to make time out for this spontaneous conversation between the two of us.
Okay, and thanks, Hemant, for inviting me.
Yeah. So I was actually, I was surfing through LinkedIn, and I've been generally going to LinkedIn and looking at what different humans are talking about. And I don't remember how I came across your profile, maybe through, through some network connection. But when I started looking at some of your posts, it has become my daily habit that I go and look at some of your posts. You post very prolifically of late, I guess. So it's difficult for me to catch up, and because some of the ideas that you discuss are coming from experience and reflection. So I thought I'll reach out to you and see if we can have a spontaneous conversation.
Yeah, I think, that's definitely good. Again, thanks for inviting me. I really welcome this opportunity. So I think, as a way of intro, basically trying to understand the man or the person behind this, right? I hail from I would say, as a class theory, from I would say, lower middle class family, humble, modest lower middle class family from West Bengal. So, and from a small town like Kharagpur. So as I was growing up, I kind of detected, some tendency to escape into abstractions. For example, and that can start, anybody's exposure to Euclidean geometry, you basically get to know that, this is how systematic thought can happen. And also exposure to arithmetic, clever puzzles, and all those things, right? And what you can do is that you can basically use that as a luxury, even though and at those times, like this is 70s, right? Even though you may not have ready access to luxury like color television or anything like that. So I feel, looking in retrospect, I feel I lived through a very fortunate time. That's because the lack of availability of those technological means to get lost and not get lost in the thought is now it appears to me as a luxury in retrospect. Now, if people need to do that, like what I'm describing, the condition in 70s, just a humble radio, not even a tape recorder, just a humble radio playing, Binaka Gitmala and those kind of things, a long session of playing out songs, Bollywood songs, and reading out the letters and such, like with human touch. That if you want to do now, you'll have to do something like a internet detox. And now these things, they are very fancy and they become news items. For example, Salesforce chief, after conducting a very large layoff, and that too in a somewhat bizarre way, because whatever the way it was done, it was not at all congruent to the Ohana or family, large family culture that is purposely designed to be deeply entrenched into Salesforce culture and such and such. So those kind of the dissonance, and these are so jarring, and this exercise, leadership exercise, and so jarring that Salesforce chief Mark needed to take a 1 week of digital detox. So what is happening, and these are top leaders, like I am nowhere near compared to them. But what I see is that what's happening is that, our ability to take the sensory overload has become abundantly apparent. If I see the amount of high quality articles that I come to know daily, and I'm not able to read them, or basically lengthy post, which I also try to do. So these are basically making us very evident that we are extremely limited to confront the modern technological marvels, apparently heading or rushing towards singularity. So then, what is the recourse? I basically posed a problem, right? So I started in very humbly saying that I did not have that much of stimuli, technological powered stimuli. And then I used to take getting lost in abstractions as a luxury, self-created luxury, even though I didn't have easy luxury as a, and that's why I wanted to put my class, like an original class, in perspective. And that is no denigration or any self-deprecation or anything. It's just a statement of fact. And it is still a statement of fact for many, many people in India, in developing country like India. And these, if they see this recording, maybe it may be a helpful aid, that you do have access to luxury. You have access to luxury of thinking. So, but at the same time, technology has become very cheap, and it basically provides you a dizzying array of sensory stimulus. A very good video, a very nice song, a depthful article, a small quote. So I think that should be the intro of reflection journey, right? So make up your mind like how you want to lead your life. So yeah, I think I'll stop there. That's the intro.
That's wonderful, Sumin. You covered quite a bit of interesting grounds. You talked about abstraction, and it's interesting that most of the time we are not sharing experiences or talking about the here and now. We're actually talking about aspects of there and then, there and then and that, rather than here and now and this. And whenever we come, and then we try to stitch together these here and now and this in different ways, and it calls for abstraction or layers that we need to build in. And you interestingly also talked about getting lost, which is the wonderment or wandering mind. Um, um, and um, and I think it's interesting that you talked about the sensory overload that we right now have, because we are constantly on this hyper stimulating treadmill, which is just wanting. So each of us are constantly wanting more and more of stimulants, and each stimulus that we get, we're not able to even savor it enough. So we are not able to savor what we get or have in the quest of what we want, which is again hyper-stimulating that we want ever so.
Right.
So it's very interesting that you lay that as a starting. Do you want to chime in more on this, or?
Yeah, so that's just an intro, right? If we chime more into it, right, it basically vector into living philosophy, right? Our philosophy of living, right? So if you seriously believe the intro that I gave, starting from a humble background and lower middle class, in humble, modest, lower middle class in India, and then arguably, I think I do live at least solidly into middle class in Silicon Valley and such and such. So the thing is that and then heart of all this technological creation, including ChatGPT, Bard, scary developments that's happening in the last 1 week of the kind of things Bard is telling, possibly harassing a journalist, comparing the journalist to Hitler, telling bad things about the journalist, and potentially maybe pushing somebody towards suicide and all those things, right? Very, very objectionable, highly objectionable technological development. So these are all good, and that are good or bad or ugly or whatever it is. But we means the humble individual or vulnerable individual in the vortex of all this, right? They need to do one thing for sure. They need to figure out how they want to live going forward. How they want to live, like whether they have adequate savings, and whether they want to live modestly with thinking, or keep continuing earning high earnings or modest earnings. Depend, make up your mind. But what you need to do is that you need to take care of yourself. You need to take care of your soul. If you need to detect that whether you are getting tortured, or you need to hydrate or heal and such, right? And whether you need to disconnect from the sensory stimulus or not. So that intro, if you want to extend, right, it basically vectors into a philosophy of living, like, starting from the, okay, that's past, that's a good, that should be a good guide. But how does it guide you to live with some semblance of presence, some semblance of not being a zombie, of sensory overload, technological overpowering, and such and such. So that, is a humble thing to do. It's ultimately it's up to you, because you had that past, and I consider my humble past as a treasure, because the more humble the past is, the more human you are as exposed. If you already live in a 5-bedroom house where you hardly use more than 2 bedroom, then what's happening is that you are basically looking at a void that you bought into a 5-bedroom house, but you hardly use 2 bedroom. Actually, you should have a very large family to live in a 5-bedroom house, maybe. And people who have not left you, like, you have not become an empty nester, which is the case with me. I have a daughter and who has left for PhD, and like since 2016, she is out of the house. So basically, ultimately, the reality is that you are left with yourself, not even your wife, not even your son or daughter. You are left with yourself. So it is very important to figure out a philosophy of living, using your background as a crutch, as a support mechanism.
It's interesting, Soman, when you were speaking, and I think these words are so profound, profound in the sense that they can put you to a halt. And when we ask ourselves of this question, how we want to live, there are a few things that do come to mind, and I'm sure you would have wrestled with this thing. There's no parallel economic system. There's this one economic system which is on a treadmill.
Okay.
And if you were to argue, then there is no global CEO of any economy, world economy, but the powers that are interacting with themselves to give rise to the forces in a certain direction have certain things in common, in the sense opportunism, short-sightedness, self-interestedness, self-aggrandizement, and we can put words, narcissism, psychopathic behavior, and maximizing a few variables.
Right.
And once you put the economy on these kind of feature set, you obviously, then if you want to participate in this economy, there are certain things that are expected of you in terms of your education. And if you want to also then take care of your health, then there are certain costs to it. How do you think through these things, which are basic survival needs? And there is this one economy. I mean, I'm just using it loosely. It's not homogeneous, it's heterogeneous. But I'm just, as a metaphor, I'm just saying, you don't have a parallel economy to look at. How do you think through this?
Well, yeah, so basically, like, I am a product of an economy. I am a product of a globalized education system, which is explained as follows. So as you know, like, I started from background and then started to take interest in abstract thinking, which resulted into education success. Then I went to NIT, 4 year of NIT electrical engineering. Then I joined HCL, didn't like the job, quit within 3 months. Then, I went for some preparation at home, basically unemployed, for the next exam, which is a graduate aptitude test in engineering gate, and then went into IIT Kharagpur, again electrical, again campus through TCS, but this time Tata Consultancy Service, but this time I stuck through, and entered the globalized industrial world as a software engineer in 90s. Powered through 3 decades, 90 plus 30 is to 2020 and all those things, right? So basically, I'm definitely a product of a globalized economic system, the one economic system that you allude to, right? But what's happening is that, economic system is just one aspect of human activity. There are other human activities, like creating beautiful poetries or writing books and so there's a very wider activity of connecting to humans and forming network of humans, elevating higher level thoughts. So if we cast this human activity is a predominant economic activity, which may be reality, but which is a very limiting thought for us humanity as a whole. Also, what needs to happen is that, and unfortunately, I do not see the rise of human leaders, proportionate to the amount of people are being created, right? So if you see my lineage is Bengali, right? So we have like people like these rustic guru, Bengali guru Ramkrishna, not at all sophisticated, uh, but just does sermoning in Bengali. But then, he could get a global leader like Vivekananda, and if you do a little bit of anybody who can do a little bit of study of that, they can understand, like, the how he wanted to bring up the youth and such, right? So what we see is that, the number of people in the world is still increasing, but the corresponding proportion of human leaders, which takes a broader look of health, happiness, activities, connection, deeper connection forming, and such is missing. We do see a preponderance of economic leaders, but as I said, it's just narrow economic activity. So that's unfortunately is a shortcoming of certain creation that is being experienced. But I hope it will be corrected. But if it is not, if it is unfettered, uh, just worshipping of just economic activity, which is a narrow band of activity for humanism, then that will be a problem for us humans as a whole. And we also have to remember that humans is also again is a narrow part of the overall ecosystem that is there present here. We have to think about all other animals and our impact on that, and those broader thinking has to happen. Unfortunately, the pace of technology has been breakneck, and that revolution needs to correspondingly be matched with other revolutions in thinking. Basic humanism oriented thinking, thinking about the earth as a whole, the world as a whole, and making technology or technological advances very easily accessible or cheaply accessible over the world, even though it may not have any corresponding economic justification. And then again, as you basically ease the access, right, the harmful effects of that, how to contain that algorithmically or through architecture or through understanding and governance and relationships. So these, humans as a whole, they need to think, or in my thesis, which may be an objectionable statement to go on recorded video, but I'm consciously doing it. We as a human beings may be headed towards extinction within few centuries. How? Let's say that you look at demographic trend, and let's say the demographic trend is not, let's say it's not family friendly. So what does it mean? Means basically the stable replacement ratio is 2.1. It's not 2. It's not 2. It's not 2 people having 2 kids. It's actually 2.1 or 2.2, something like that. Because some people will die early and all those things. But people, don't even want to have one children. Why? Because it takes a village to raise children. If the breakneck pace of technology takes away all your attention, why, as a thinking being, will you invest in 2 kids for even 1 kid? Because all your attention, sensory overload or breakneck pace and keeping pace and such, on the economic activity, preponderance of economic activity, then all your attention is diverted towards that. Why would you do a deep investment in bringing up 2.1 child to support the such stable replacement ratio? So if we see that, this is the case with China already. Actually, I do not know whether it's public knowledge or widely public knowledge or not. The demographic crash of China has already started. Now, when you take a country like China, big continent like China, difficult geography, you match with demographic crash, they are headed towards a very big problem, which can be countered by automation. But if a society is mostly controlled by automation, then there is no creativity, not much of creativity. You need organic involvement of the populace in the ecosystem to basically make further replacement with this. If you have predominance of automation and such, then you will have a gradual dying down, dumbing down population. So as you see, we really have a big problem in hand. It can be countered in some way, but demographic crash is very real and
Scary.
and is scary.
Yeah, it's interesting, Suman, and just to build on what you just said, tell me how the following sounds to you. In my limited understanding and analysis, I see that there is a sort of move that happened in the last 150, 200 years, or you may say the last 50, 60 years. And the move was this, that before this move happened, a lot of emphasis was on collective, community, following of tradition, and then there was this move towards individuation, migration,
Right.
reliance on reason, over-reliance on reason to find your own personal truths and question traditions and question everybody. So now what we find ourselves in is we find highly individualized, crowd sort of thing, and seeking belongingness and seeking communities, and trying to come suddenly for some spontaneous interest or cause, but then falling off as well, because those are not sustained over a period of time. Do you think the geographical proximity is extremely crucial to have a large inventory of each other's behavior and vulnerabilities to build stronger bonds over a period of time? Because right now, for example, even now, I'm speaking with you, we may share certain interest, and that's bringing us together here. It may be even as simple as having healthy argumentation, let's say. But then the moment this call gets over, you get back to your life and I get back to my life. One can argue it's brilliant, now thousands of miles away, you can interact with each other. Do you think this geographical distance and in hyper-individuation and over-abstraction is also leading to challenges in the society right now?
Yeah, I think so, because like as human beings, we remain ever vulnerable. We do not exactly know how our mind works. How we do not exactly know how our mind works, and we also not very aware of the unfolding architecture of life, because we don't have easy access to gurus or human leaders. The gurus can be abandoned, but whether they are commercial interest gurus, then that point is moot, right? But the guru can be your parents or grandparents, but anyway, like we constantly need access to gurus, because gurus, they have the highest distillation of knowledge. I'll give you an example, right? Um, like this past weekend, right? Like we kind of wanted to explore a new township. We heard about the township, and we kind of to explore. And I did a post on that, and then we went there, and like we immediately disliked it, and then we kind of tried to think, like why we disliked it. And the reason is that, like the township is very cookie cutter. It doesn't have any architecture. And it has rows and rows and rows of large houses, right? So what happens is that, once you go into, and then it goes for some geographic area, like, a small town, like let's say 500 or even 1,000 homes, but it's rows and rows and rows of homes without divided in architecture. So what happens is that, if you are not very perceptive, right, once you basically buy into the township, right, maybe you'll be able to afford it, maybe you'll not have any mortgage and such, right? But then what will happen is that, the depression will descend upon you because it's very monotonous. It doesn't have variety of architecture. It doesn't surprise you that you go this turn, left turn, right turn, you get lost because they all look the same. Then you have to depend on GPS to get out, because you don't have distinctive marker. Oh, there was a crooked tree here. Then I take right, which is so very prevalent in India. You ask for a direction, you get this kind of direction that you see this. There's a temple there. Take a left, and then you'll see a small pond, and they'll go there, and then you'll find that, right? So these variations, these human connections, they basically work wonders in our mind, in our life architecture. So this the other thing that you mentioned, right? Rise of individualism, making progress and prosperity. I am definitely a case of that. I can clearly see in that life. But what will happen is that if you want to pursue that story, right, by definition, you will need to be disconnected. How? Because by definition, you'll have to migrate to Silicon Valley. By definition, you'll have to build up your life alone in Silicon Valley. And what will happen is that in that experience, you'll be basically dying. Immigration is like a death. Why it is a death? Because you actually die. Then you create your life. So and you are taking the decision to die actually. Like when you cross over 7 seas and land in San Francisco with 2 suitcases, and then gradually get into an apartment, initially single, then you marry, and the joint of both of you gradually built up your life, and then you claim your life again with certain degree of assimilation, which is not guaranteed. But I hope that in the new society where you immigrated, that assimilation will happen and you'll find your life again. Otherwise, you basically just continue disconnected, dead life with apparent material progress. So again, what I'm telling you is that we do not have easy access to life architecture because, as I said, we do not have easy access to gurus. And the gurus, they have the highest distillation of energy, of knowledge, the wisdom, which is called wisdom. So then you make up your mind, what is that you want to do. But all I can tell you is that if you don't have real human connection, right, you will feel you will feel exposed. And my posts are so so current. What I'm saying, I just did a post on a book called Palo Alto, which just published this month. Oh my God. Well, within first few pages, like within maybe 5 pages, he starts talking about Palo Alto Suicides. And I know about this, but like somebody who is a native born Palo Alto decides to write a book, within 5 pages starts talking about a Palo Alto cluster of suicides. You can pretty well understand, how they are going to treat this Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I have not written the book. Somebody who grew up in Palo Alto has written the book, and see how they treat the glory of Silicon Valley.
Coming back to what you were mentioning, Subain, I see. I mean, I've become wary of defining the world in binaries because I think binary is also a trap many a times. But just for the sake of argumentation, I see the world currently between the Pinker versus Piketty camp. On one side you have Pinker talking about in his book Enlightenment Now details and statistics of progress. Which he hails, science and reason and work ethics moving in that direction. And then you have Piketty, who talks about the inequality and the divides, sort of.
Sure.
How would you respond to people in the Pinker camp when they do talk about infant mortality going down and healthcare access being there and education giving social mobility to people and a whole lot of other violence in the sense how Pinker defines violence, and that's again objectionable or argumentative. How would you start to think about these things?
Yeah, so I think ultimately this view prevails that like you can earn immense amount of wealth, but I think it is the right thing to do to almost all give away for all of them, right? So So as long as that prevails, and then there is sensible governance of that wealth redistribution, I think that's good. So that kind of addresses the income equality, but it kind of addresses that wealth equality and income inequality, that addresses in a very reactive manner. you know so you basically have a lifetime of wealth creation, or not only, it's not only you, because when you do that with a group of people, right? So you take a center, let's say Bill Gates, and then you look at Steve Ballmer and all those things, right? It's a group of people, right? They create they have the wealth, right? And not all of them are thinking in the same way. So that, and then like if it basically given away at the end, right? It is very reactive. What I would say, or urge, or request, or fervently plea people who are creating wealth is to think very actively, in the moment, in the present, right? How the fruits of wealth and fruits of knowledge can be actively dispersed throughout the humanity, and as an active measure, not as a very late reactive measure. So, so I am, in that sense, I am more in the Piketty camp, and it is apparent in my thinking, and then if you look at the Palo Alto, right, the very recent book. Why I'm talking about that? Because I'm sitting here in Silicon Valley, and it's a searing book on Silicon Valley, published in this month, February of 2023. So if you look at his NPR interview, he's not shying away to say that he's a Marxist. A Marxist in the sense that he tries, his lens of understanding the society is through class struggle. And in America, he basically says that in NPR interview, yeah, I'm a Marxist. My lens is class struggle. And I think I would applaud that. What's the point in doing a very 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 late reactive wealth redistribution, instead of doing it, thinking it actively, and so since you framed the question, thinker versus Piketty, I would say the growing wealth and income equality gravely concerns me. It impedes others' ability to understand the world, interact with the world with a sensible way, which in turn, in a very complex unfolding ecosystem, can come back and bite me. We have seen, what happened with pandemic. The very fast fall, very fast connection, and not being prepared with vaccines and such effective measures, global coordination and such. We cannot simply think that I live in Silicon Valley and I'm insulated by the first death of corona actually happened in my backyard in Santa Clara County. You can look it up. The very first recorded death, and I was not even aware, and it happened here. And then, fortunately, we were spared, but it happened in Santa Clara. The very first death of United States, I think, due to corona. So in a hyper-connected global world, we need a consistent and active philosophy of humanism. There is no escaping from that. Fortunately, people are thinking about that, and we are trying to understand and do derivative work based on through our own post. But what was the purpose of my post on Palo Alto? It's just a post saying that hey, I have started reading the book, and this is within first few pages it talks about cluster of suicides in Silicon Valley. What's the reason behind it? Why do I have to do that post? The reason is that I have my NIT colleague's son, after $80, he is basically staying here in Palo Alto and trying to do their own startup. And there's a very high incidence of depression among the entrepreneurs, because there is very high chance of failure. So if we do not know the overall ecosystem, the life architecture, how life unfolds, just pursuing certain narrow goals, economic goals, which I tried to tell you before, economic is just a very narrow slice of human activity. We just need to take a much broader perspective, need to be much broader leader in order to make a sense of that. Otherwise, yes, I can spend a life of luxury and not taking care. And then, maybe I'll die happily or not happily, but it will not result into aggregate happiness. Many people are going to not have a somewhat of a decent experience in life. and that concerns me.
So Suman, you were discussing that that entrepreneurs and leaders and professionals, when they are on this economic purpose, which is driven by a certain kind of forces of valuations on Wall Streets and private equity and venture capitalists and global competitiveness, there are two questions that come to mind, two curiosities that come to mind. One is, suppose you were guiding leaders or you were to counsel these leaders, what are the things that they can practically start doing, or at least experimenting with? Because I know that different companies and different organizations will have different context. So that's one curiosity. The other curiosity I had was, how do you think the advent and widespread nature of AI, ML, all the kinds of exponential tech, how is that going to constrain or facilitate the adoption of humanism and economic purpose?
Okay, so I'll start with the second one first because it's easier to answer in my experience. So what's going to happen is that with advancement of AI, hopefully tremendous productivity power will hopefully again will disperse among the masses at comparably affordable cost, right? One example is that somebody is able to get beautiful summarization in Hindi about various questions they pose in Hindi. This TikTok platform, right? I know there is a lady. What that lady does? She teaches short English things to a large number of followers in India, and that has a benefit. Somebody who is able to do that, maybe they drive a auto rickshaw, or maybe they are in a small this thing, and if they can pick up this lingua franca, like how to conduct business in some English, right? And that lady has basically is doing leadership in a medium like TikTok, which is supposedly so. That's what, right? So this is just an example of somebody's individual leadership, that lady. But with advancement of AI, right, more and more of this tremendous productivity boost, I hope it will be, affordably become commonplace, leading to people's enhanced understanding of the world they live in. And I will not hide the fact that I am not no fan of globalization, even though I am a product of globalization. But I am speaking from lifetime of experiences. What I prefer to advance as a policy prescription, policy position, is basically intense localization, retaining the culture and language and all other footprint, aided by technological deployment to bridge the gap that happens by definition by human history, that is entrenched by definition in human history. So if somebody wants to basically do some business with foreigners who are happening to travel in Rajasthan in English or broken English, right, they should be able to do that with affordable device, or even learning the skill with an affordable device or affordable information service, but remain intensely local, and basically let the human history of localized culture, localized footprint to develop, not let this globalization to romp through the world stage. Because if you look at the history of globalization, you will not see much of cultural justification. It is just a global tactic to to further narrow and basically American interest where I'm sitting right now. So yes, I am a product of globalization, but I am not shy to critique it or write about it because I have seen what it can do.
So I think
So
inherent. Sorry, you want to say something?
yeah, so that's the second thing. I have not forgotten the first one.
Oh.
The first one is that these leaders are developing. These leaders are developing in this globalized economic system. No doubt about that. And they individually they may be very of limited power to change the whole thing. But if there is consistent philosophy of acquiring wealth and be very proactive, not very late stage reactive, very proactive on seeing the world as a whole, and then doing something for the world as a whole, through their personal agendas, right? Yeah, if they're willing and bold enough to do that, then that will help. I am not hopeful that this collectivized or globalized or securitized Wall Street is going to change. Because those are passive investment, people just invest and they do not care about the consequence, people in for example, it is I think if you do a research, you will know that a lot of homeownership is going into securitized Wall Street ownership. So if you extend
Instruments.
this,
Yeah.
yeah, if you extend this more and more, most likely there will not be any individual ownership. So then what is it actually? Like nobody owns nothing. So if that is the case, there could be some deep impacts in terms of culture, in terms of not having a roots or basically very standardized culture, what modification you can do at home and this. So what I'm saying is that if we are not very careful enough, right, we can head towards extinction very soon, with either use of AI or use of wealth or use of technology, or not controlling the harmful effect of technology, not having very strong localization mindset. As I said, I am not a fan of globalization, not having because it uproots people. People die. As I told you, if you immigrate, you die and then you claim your life again. So why to do that again and again? And the things I'm saying are relevant. They are not made up. Right now, many H1Bs, Indian H1Bs, who came over seven seas to basically start their life, and maybe they had a length of life, let's say 7 years, 8 years, and then suddenly there's, hey, you need to leave the country in 60 days. What is this? Is it like what kind of humanism is this? People started building their life 7 8 years of run. Somebody has an autistic son. They are getting good medical care. Now they have to pack up and leave within 60 days because of some vagaries of Western capitalism and H1B migration. People should be ashamed if they call H1B again. Or people should be wise enough not to accept H1B again. And I am saying this on a recorded with Zoom call.
Yeah. Sumin, a thing that comes to me when I hear what you just said is, if the following were right, which is most of the tech giants today were founded in small ways, in garages and small startups. And if you read some of the stories of these people, they actually were set out to change the world. They set out for a better world.
Okay.
Even OpenAI, I was reading one of the articles on OpenAI by a journalist, and they had set out for a non-profit kind of a thing, and then something changed along the way. And last year they had a capped profit kind of a thing. What do you think? What is happening? I mean, people, well-meaning, well-intentioned people, get onto a journey. A bunch of very enthusiastic people and skilled people come together. They build something which is interesting and has some value offering to people. What happens along the way?
So Hemant, the allure of wealth is undeniable. I still carry some mortgage, and I would like to pay off that mortgage and then live in this nice neighborhood, nice house, without any worry. So allure of wealth is undeniable. Which I'm not going to deny that also. But all I'm saying is that allure of how much wealth, currently I live in some modest 3-bedroom house, right? And now would I want to go for 4, 5, 6 or this or that? or even exclusive gated neighborhood and this and that, right? So that balance, constantly, people need to find, that people in developed economies, they need to find more and more. So more and more, and then decide to basically invest their time, if not wealth, towards a better understanding of the world. Like when I do LinkedIn posting, right, I try to make sure that it has architecture. Like, first of all, it has a headline. It refers to an article, or it refers to an image, a provocative image. Then it has a narrative architecture within 3,000 words of this. So there is an intellectual investment that goes in. Uh, and and why am I trying to do that? I'm trying to basically, at the highest abstraction level, which, as I said, that that was my favorite pastime when I was growing up, is to basically get into a better understanding of the world. My post may not be accurate, but it has an architecture. It basically brings a confluence of confluence of currents. The referred picture, referred article, my perspective on it, the controversial or the sometimes clickbait headline. Then basically my thought layout, right? Uh, uh, and then admission that all my posts are wrong, but some could be useful. So so basically at least I'm investing my time, right? So people need to basically just do not fall prey to a narrow current of human ideas, and that's the only message I have. Take a broader view. Like I sometimes make fun, this World Series that goes on in America is just a Major League Baseball of within America, but they still call the World Series, and I basically take this as an indictment of very narrow view of United States, which is the most powerful nation on the face of earth, right? So that nation itself has to take a broader view in the world stage, not in the way of American exceptionalism, but in the way of basically uh, dispersing, more of the technological fruits, more of the intellectual fruits that is ever so present in these hallways of vaunted American universities, which my daughter is part of now. She is doing a PhD on theoretical computer science in Carnegie Mellon University. So, so I hope, as she gets this very expensive education and followed by PhD and such, that she subscribes to some of the things I'm saying and then gives back to the world.
Interesting. Sumit, I'm sorry, you saying something?
Yeah. No. Yeah.
So I was looking at my notes, and there are tons of them that are still open. And what I would do is I'll request for another round of interaction with you if you could, also keep some more time some other day, and we'll come back and record it again. And meanwhile, publish this bit soon as possible.
Again, thanks for the opportunity. Yeah, really appreciate it.